You know what? I'm done. I should have done this a long time ago. There, I signed it. Your turn. Sign it, because I'm over this marriage. And when this is finished, this company belongs to me.
11 years. That's how long they had been building everything together. And yet, in that moment, she felt like a stranger. The silence between them stretched, heavy and deliberate, as if something far bigger than a marriage was already in motion. Marcus glanced down at the documents, then back up again. He had no idea this was only the beginning of something he would never see coming. Before we get into the story, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel. We bring you new stories every week. Now let's go. At 9:17 on a Monday morning, Marcus Grayson stood outside the headquarters of Grayson House with a security guard telling him he could no longer enter the building he had designed himself. For almost 11 years, Marcus had walked through those glass doors without anyone questioning him. He had chosen the marble in the lobby. He had approved the architectural plans. He had signed the first lease when the company was still operating out of a small warehouse. And now, the security guard wouldn't even look him in the eye. "I'm sorry, Mr. Grayson," the man said quietly. "I'm just following instructions." Marcus looked through the glass. Employees were moving between offices. Executives were arriving for their morning meetings. And on the wall behind the reception desk was the company logo he had drawn on a piece of paper 11 years earlier. Grayson House. His company. At least, that's what he had always believed. Marcus reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. There were 17 missed calls. 8 were from lawyers, 3 were from his bank, and 1 was from his wife. Danielle. He didn't call her back. Instead, he looked once more at the building. Then he turned around and walked toward the parking garage. No shouting, no argument, no scene. That was the part that confused everyone watching. They expected Marcus to fight. They expected him to demand answers. Instead, he simply left. What they didn't know was that Marcus had already spent the previous 3 months watching his life disappear piece by piece. First, Danielle had taken over the company's public operations. Then Adrian Cole, the company's COO, began holding executive meetings without Marcus. After that, Vanessa Reed, the CFO, started sending financial reports that somehow became shorter every month. Whenever Marcus asked questions, he received the same answer. Everything is under control. But Marcus had built his company by noticing things other people ignored, and something was very wrong. 3 weeks earlier, he had discovered that several large payments were leaving Grayson House and ending up with companies he had never heard of. Companies with unfamiliar names, different addresses, different directors. But one thing connected them. Every payment eventually led back to people close to Danielle. Marcus didn't accuse anyone, not yet. He started collecting records instead. Bank statements, contracts, board minutes, emails, old incorporation documents. And one particular file that had been sitting untouched for almost a decade. At the time, Marcus hadn't thought much about that file. The company had been worth less than $1 million when he created it. Now Grayson House was approaching $200 million, and that old document suddenly mattered more than anything else he owned. But Danielle and her partners didn't know about it. They believed Marcus was distracted. They believed the divorce had broken his concentration. They believed that once they pushed him out of the company, he would have nothing left to fight for. And they had one more reason to be confident. That morning, Danielle had already signed the final papers. Marcus's marriage was ending. His access to the company was gone. His partners had turned against him. And as far as everyone inside Grayson House was concerned, Marcus Grayson had finally lost. But as he reached his car, his phone vibrated. One new message. Marcus looked at the screen. It contained only 7 words. The transfer was completed as requested. He stared at the message for a moment. Then, for the first time that morning, Marcus smiled. Not because he had won. He hadn't. Not yet. He put the phone in his pocket, got into his car and drove away. Because Danielle had spent months planning how to take control of his company. What she didn't know was that Marcus had spent those same months making sure there was something she could never take. And he was about to find out just how far she and her partners were willing to go to get it. 3 days before Marcus was locked out of Grayson House, Danielle had sat across from him at their kitchen table and asked him a question that at the time seemed almost harmless. "Do you still trust me?" Marcus had looked at her for several seconds. They had been married for 11 years. He knew the way she smiled when she was nervous. He knew the way she avoided eye contact when she was hiding something. And that night, she wasn't doing either. She looked completely calm. "Yes," Marcus finally said. Danielle smiled. "Good." That was all she said. But Marcus would later remember that conversation for a very different reason. Because that same night, while Danielle was sleeping upstairs, someone accessed one of the company's private financial accounts. And the person who authorized the transaction wasn't Marcus. It was Danielle. The following morning, Marcus received an automated alert. A payment of $480,000 had been transferred from Grayson House to a company called Meridian Strategic Holdings. Marcus had never heard of it. He called Vanessa Reed. "What's Meridian Strategic?" There was a pause. Then Vanessa answered, "It's a consulting company." "Who hired them?" Another pause. "Danielle." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "What exactly are they consulting us on?" "Corporate restructuring." That answer bothered him. Grayson House wasn't restructuring. At least, nobody had told him it was. Marcus asked Vanessa to send him the contract. She said she would. She never did. 2 days later, Marcus asked again. This time, Vanessa sounded irritated. "Marcus, Danielle is handling operations now. You need to trust the process." The process. Marcus hated those two words. They were what people said when they didn't want you asking questions, so he stopped asking them. Instead, he started looking. And what he found was worse than he expected. Meridian Strategic Holdings wasn't really a consulting company. It had been incorporated only 6 months earlier. Its registered office was a small suite in a building in Delaware. Its listed director was a man named Adrian Cole. Marcus stared at the document. Adrian was his COO, the man who had worked beside him for almost 7 years, the man Marcus had personally promoted, the man he had trusted enough to give access to nearly every major operation in the company. Marcus opened another file. Meridian had already received more than $2 million from Grayson House. Then he found another company, and another. Different names, different addresses, different bank accounts. But the same pattern. Money left Grayson House. It moved through one company, then another, and eventually part of it ended up connected to Meridian. Marcus sat alone in his office that evening, staring at the numbers. He wasn't angry. Not yet. He was trying to understand. Because if Danielle and Adrian were stealing money, why were they doing it so slowly? Why create layers of companies? Why move relatively small amounts instead of taking everything at once? Then he noticed something. The payments weren't the real objective. They were preparing something much bigger. Marcus pulled up the company's corporate records. Several weeks earlier, the board had approved changes to the company's ownership structure, but Marcus had never voted on them. His signature appeared on the documents. He stared at it. Then he zoomed in. The signature looked like his. Almost perfect. But Marcus knew it wasn't. He had signed thousands of documents in his life. He knew his own handwriting. Someone had forged his signature. And suddenly the pieces began connecting. The consulting payments, the shell companies, the altered corporate records, the sudden control Danielle had taken over operations. This wasn't about the divorce. The divorce was part of something larger. They weren't simply trying to separate from Marcus. They were trying to remove him from Grayson House. Permanently. Marcus called his attorney. Her name was Kendra Moss. She had represented him for years, but Marcus deliberately kept the conversation short. "I need you to do something for me." "What?" "Don't contact Danielle." Kendra paused. "Marcus, what's happening?" "I think they're preparing to take the company." There was silence. Then Kendra asked the question Marcus had been avoiding. "How much evidence do you have?" Marcus looked at the stack of documents on his desk. "Enough to know I don't have enough." That night, he made a decision. He wasn't going to confront Danielle. He wasn't going to accuse Adrian. He wasn't going to walk into a board meeting and demand explanations. Not yet. Because if they had forged his signature once, Marcus had no idea what else they had prepared. And there was something else bothering him. The old corporate documents. The ones he had created when Grayson House was still a tiny company. He opened the locked cabinet beneath his desk. Inside was a thin black folder. Nothing about it looked important. No company logo, no expensive binding, just a handwritten date on the front. 2015. Marcus opened it. Inside were the original formation documents for the company. He read the first page, then the second, then the third. His expression changed. For the first time in weeks, Marcus understood something Danielle and Adrian had completely missed. They had been trying to take control of Grayson House by changing the company's current structure, but there was an older structure underneath it. One they had apparently never found. Marcus closed the folder, then he called Kendra again. "This changes everything. What did you find?" Marcus looked toward the window. Outside, the city lights stretched across the skyline. "I'm not ready to tell you over the phone. Marcus, I need you to meet me tomorrow morning." "Where?" "Somewhere they can't see us." Kendra was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" Marcus looked down at the folder. "No." A pause. "But I know what they're doing." And that was enough. The next morning, Marcus met Kendra at a quiet cafe nearly 40 minutes outside the city. He brought the folder. She brought a laptop. Neither of them knew that someone had already begun watching Marcus. And while they were sitting inside that cafe, Danielle was sitting in the Grayson House boardroom with Adrian and Vanessa. On the table in front of them was a document labeled Final Control Agreement. Danielle looked at it and smiled. "How long?" Adrian checked his watch. 2 weeks. "And after that?" Adrian leaned back. "After that, Marcus won't own anything that matters." Danielle looked through the glass wall toward Marcus's empty office. For a moment, something almost like regret crossed her face. Then it disappeared, because she believed the hardest part was already over. She didn't know Marcus had just found the one document that could destroy their entire plan. And she certainly didn't know that the document contained something even more dangerous than ownership. It contained a record of who had actually built Grayson House in the first place. And that name wasn't Danielle Grayson. It was Marcus Grayson. Marcus didn't go back to Grayson House. That was the first thing that surprised everyone. For the next 2 weeks, the man who had once been inside the building before most employees arrived was nowhere to be seen. No angry emails, no calls to the board, no social media statements, no lawsuit announced to the press, nothing. Danielle took his silence as surrender. Adrian took it as weakness. Vanessa took it as confirmation that their plan was working. But Marcus wasn't doing nothing, he was building a case. Every morning he met with Kendra Moss. And every afternoon, a forensic accountant named Simone Barrett went through years of Grayson House's financial records. Simone wasn't interested in opinions, she wanted numbers. Every transfer, every invoice, every signature, every company that had received money from Grayson House. Within days, she found something that changed the investigation. "Marcus," Simone said, turning her laptop toward him, "look at these 3 payments." Marcus leaned forward. The payments had been made months apart, different amounts, different vendors, but they all contained the same internal authorization code. Simone pointed at it. Someone used this code to make these transactions appear to have been approved under the company's executive restructuring program. Marcus frowned. "I never created that program." "I know." She clicked again. "And there's something else." A spreadsheet appeared. At the top was a list of company assets, properties, design patents, architectural plans, development rights, intellectual property. Marcus stared at the final column. Almost everything valuable had been assigned a new owner, a company called Vance Meridian Group. Marcus recognized the name immediately. "Who's behind it?" Simone looked at Kendra. Kendra answered, "We're still tracing it." Marcus sat back. The room became quiet. For months, Danielle and Adrian had been moving pieces around the board. They weren't simply taking money. They were trying to separate Grayson House from the assets that made it valuable. If they succeeded, Marcus could technically retain an interest in the company while losing almost everything that gave the company its worth. It was clever and dangerous. But there was one problem. They had made the same mistake again. They had assumed Marcus was only looking at the present. He wasn't. Marcus reached into his briefcase and removed the old black folder. He placed it on the table. Simone looked at it. "What is that?" "The beginning." Kendra opened the folder. Inside were the original formation documents from 2015. The company wasn't originally structured the way Danielle and Adrian believed. Before Grayson House became a corporation with outside investors, Marcus had created a separate holding entity. It owned the company's original intellectual property, the early architectural designs, the trademarks, several development rights, and, most importantly, a controlling block of voting shares. Kendra read the document twice. Then she looked up. "Marcus, I know. Do Danielle and Adrian know about this?" Marcus shook his head. "No." Kendra slowly closed the folder. "Then why haven't they discovered it?" Marcus gave a small smile. "Because nobody looked for something they thought didn't matter." That was the advantage of building a company from the ground up. Marcus remembered every decision, every lawyer, every contract, every mistake. Danielle remembered the company as it had become. Marcus remembered the company as it had been built. But Marcus still wasn't ready to act. He wanted more. He needed to know who else was involved. So Simone kept digging. 3 days later, she found a payment connecting Vance Meridian Group to an account controlled by Adrian Cole. Then she found something worse. A series of communications between Adrian and an outside investment firm. They were discussing the possibility of selling Grayson House's most valuable properties once Marcus was removed. The sale would generate tens of millions of dollars. And Danielle wasn't included in the conversation. Marcus read the messages twice. Then a third time. Kendra noticed his expression. "They're planning to cut her out." Marcus nodded. That was the moment something inside him changed. Until then, part of Marcus had still been trying to understand how his wife could betray him. Now he understood. Danielle wasn't the architect of the entire plan. She was another piece on the board. Adrian had convinced her that she was taking control of the company. But once Marcus was gone, Adrian intended to take control from her. Marcus leaned back. "She doesn't know." "No," Kendra said. "And if we expose Adrian now, he'll know we're onto him." Marcus looked at the documents again. "Then we don't expose him." Kendra stared at him. "What do you want to do?" Marcus closed the folder. "Let him keep going." That decision changed everything. Instead of stopping the takeover, Marcus allowed the conspirators to continue. He quietly instructed Kendra to challenge only the most obvious transactions. Not enough to stop them, just enough to make them believe they were getting away with it. Simone continued collecting records. Former employees were contacted. Archived emails were recovered. Old board minutes were obtained. And then Marcus did something nobody expected. He disappeared from the business world completely. For almost 3 months, there were no interviews, no public appearances, no statements. The media assumed he had lost. Business blogs began describing Danielle as the new force behind Grayson House. One headline called her the woman who saved $180 million design empire. Danielle loved the article. She framed it. Marcus saw the photograph online. He didn't comment. Instead, he looked at another photograph sitting on his desk. It was much older. Marcus and Danielle were standing outside their first workshop. They were younger. Their clothes were simple. The company didn't exist yet. Neither of them had money. Danielle was laughing. Marcus was looking at her. For a moment, he remembered why he had married her. That was the part nobody could prepare him for. Winning the company back was one thing. Accepting that the woman he once trusted had chosen to help destroy what they built together was something else. Then his phone rang. It was Kendra. "We have a problem." Marcus's expression hardened. "What happened?" "Adrian moved faster than we expected." "How fast?" "They're holding the final board meeting next Friday." Marcus stood. "What are they voting on?" Kendra hesitated. "Removing you permanently from the company." Marcus was silent. "And there's something else," she continued. "They're planning to announce the sale of the company's flagship property immediately afterward." Marcus looked through the window. That property was the building where Grayson House had started, the first building he and Danielle had ever designed together. If they sold it, the company's history would disappear with it. Marcus picked up his coat. "Then we're done waiting." Kendra exhaled. "What are you going to do?" Marcus looked at the old photograph one last time. "I'll see them at the board meeting." For the first time in 3 months, Marcus was going back to Grayson House. But he wasn't going back to beg for his company. He was going back because he finally had enough evidence to make them reveal exactly what they had done. and he had one more advantage they still hadn't discovered. The controlling shares weren't merely sitting in an old holding company. They had been protected by a clause Marcus had written into the original agreement. A clause that would be triggered the moment anyone attempted to remove him through forged corporate documents. Danielle, Adrian, and Vanessa believed their final board meeting would be the moment they officially erased Marcus Grayson from the company. They had no idea they'd just scheduled the meeting that could destroy everything they had built, and Marcus was going to let them walk into it. By Friday morning, Danielle was certain the company belonged to her. The boardroom at Grayson House had been prepared for the most important meeting in the company's history. 8 board members sat around the long walnut table. Adrian was at the head. Vanessa had a stack of financial documents in front of her, and Danielle sat beside Adrian, wearing the expression of someone who had already won. At the far end of the table was an empty chair, Marcus's chair. Nobody expected him to show up. For 3 months, they had watched him disappear. They had convinced themselves that his silence meant surrender. Adrian looked around the room. "We have a simple decision today." He placed a folder on the table. "We formally remove Marcus Grayson from executive control and approve the restructuring of Grayson House." One board member raised a hand. "What happens to his ownership?" Vanessa answered immediately. "The restructuring documents have already addressed that." She pushed several pages across the table. The board member studied them. "His signature is here." Adrian nodded. Marcus approved the restructuring before his departure. Nobody in the room knew that Marcus's signature had been forged. Nobody except the people who had done it. Danielle looked down at the document. For a brief moment, she felt something she couldn't explain. Guilt. Then she pushed it away. She had spent months telling herself that Marcus had become impossible to work with, that he was holding the company back, that she was doing what needed to be done. She looked at the empty chair. "He made his choice," she said quietly. Adrian smiled. "Exactly." Then the boardroom doors opened. Everyone turned. Marcus walked in. The room went silent. He wasn't dressed like a man coming to fight. Dark suit, white shirt, no tie, calm expression. He walked to the empty chair and pulled it out. Then he sat down. Danielle stared at him. "Marcus," he looked at her. "Danielle!" Adrian stood. "You're not supposed to be here." Marcus glanced at him. "I know." Adrian's expression tightened. "This meeting concerns the future of Grayson House." "I know, and you're no longer authorized to participate." Marcus placed a thin folder on the table. "Then you shouldn't have invited me." Adrian frowned. "We didn't." Marcus smiled slightly. "No." He looked around the room. But the company did. Nobody understood what he meant. Kendra Moss entered the room behind him, then Simone Barrett, then 2 additional attorneys. Adrian's confidence disappeared. "What is this?" Kendra placed a document in front of every board member. "This is a formal notice challenging the validity of the proposed restructuring." Vanessa immediately stood. "On what grounds?" "Forgery." The word changed the room. Danielle's face went pale. Adrian stared at Kendra. "You can't make an accusation like that without evidence." Kendra opened her folder. "We don't have an accusation." She placed a second document on the table. "We have evidence." She continued. "The signature used to authorize the restructuring was not executed by Marcus Grayson." Vanessa shook her head. "That is impossible." Kendra looked at her. "Then you'll have no problem explaining why the electronic authorization originated from a device registered to your office." Nobody spoke. Vanessa slowly sat down. Marcus remained completely still. Adrian looked toward Danielle. She was staring at him now. Not Marcus, him. "Adrian," she said quietly. "What? You told me everything was legal." "It is," Kendra interrupted. "Then perhaps you can explain Meridian Strategic Holdings." Adrian's face changed. Kendra continued. "Or Vance Meridian Group." She placed another set of documents on the table, or the transfers between those companies. Vanessa looked at Adrian. Adrian looked at the door. For the first time that morning, he seemed to understand. Marcus hadn't come there to defend himself. He had come prepared to expose them. But Marcus wasn't finished. He reached into his briefcase and removed the old black folder. He placed it in front of the board chairman. "I think there's something you should read before you vote." The chairman opened it. His eyes moved across the first page, then the second. Then he stopped. "What is this?" Marcus answered calmly. The original ownership agreement. Adrian laughed nervously. That document is irrelevant. Marcus looked at him. Is it? Adrian stood. You haven't had controlling authority over this company for years. Marcus said nothing. The chairman turned another page. His expression changed. Then another board member leaned forward. What does this clause mean? Kendra answered. It means the controlling voting shares were never transferred. Silence. Danielle looked at Marcus. What? Marcus finally looked directly at her. You heard her. Danielle shook her head. No, that's not possible. Marcus didn't raise his voice. You never asked what I owned. Danielle's eyes filled with disbelief, but the company was reorganized. Yes, your shares were transferred. The economic interest you were transferring was not the controlling voting interest. Adrian suddenly stepped toward the table. This is nonsense. Kendra turned toward him. Then let's discuss the second clause. She opened another document. The original agreement also contains a protective provision. Adrian stopped. If anyone attempts to remove the controlling shareholder using fraudulent corporate documents, the transfer of certain assets becomes subject to immediate review. Vanessa stared at the paperwork. What assets? Kendra looked at her. The properties transferred to Vance Meridian. Nobody moved. The room seemed to shrink. Marcus finally leaned back. That was the moment Danielle understood. He hadn't been sitting quietly for 3 months because he had given up. He had been waiting for them to finish the plan, waiting for them to move the assets, waiting for them to put everything in writing, waiting for them to create the evidence he needed. Adrian looked at Marcus with anger. You planned this. Marcus shook his head. No, he looked around the room. You planned this. Then the boardroom doors opened again. A man in a grey suit walked in carrying a sealed envelope. He handed it to the chairman. Delivery from the court. The chairman opened it. His eyes moved across the page. Then he looked at Adrian. The sale of the flagship property has been frozen. Adrian's face went completely still. Marcus didn't smile. He simply looked toward Danielle. She was staring at him as if she was seeing him for the first time. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. Marcus paused. Because you stopped asking. The room fell silent. For years, Danielle had believed Marcus was the quiet half of their partnership. She had mistaken silence for weakness. Now she realized something far more painful. Marcus had known her better than anyone in that room, and when she chose to betray him, he didn't destroy her. He simply stopped protecting her from the consequences. The chairman closed the folder. This meeting is suspended. Adrian immediately objected. You can't suspend it. We can, the chairman said, and we will. Marcus stood. Danielle watched him gather his papers. Marcus, he stopped. She looked at him. Is this really what you wanted? Marcus turned. No. Her eyes searched his face. Then what did you want? He took a breath. I wanted my wife to come to me and tell me the truth. Danielle couldn't answer. Marcus walked out. Behind him, the boardroom erupted into arguments. Adrian was demanding explanations. Vanessa was trying to make phone calls. The attorneys were collecting documents, and Danielle remained seated. Because she had finally understood the part nobody had warned her about. The company wasn't the only thing she was about to lose. She was about to lose the man who had spent 11 years believing she would never betray him. Outside, Marcus stepped into the morning air. His phone rang. Kendra. It's not over, she said. Marcus looked back at the building. I know. We found something else. What? A pause. Something Adrian did before the takeover began. Marcus's expression hardened. What did he do? Kendra lowered her voice. You're going to want to see this yourself. Marcus ended the call. He had thought the boardroom would reveal the whole conspiracy. Instead, it had exposed something much bigger. The takeover wasn't Adrian's first move. It wasn't even his second. And if what Kendra had discovered was true, the betrayal that nearly destroyed Marcus's company had actually begun years before Danielle ever knew about it. Kendra was waiting for Marcus in the parking garage. She didn't get into his car. She simply handed him a folder through the window. Read the first page. Marcus opened it. His eyes moved across the document, then stopped. It was dated 6 years earlier, before the divorce, before the boardroom, before Danielle had ever suspected that anyone wanted Marcus out of Grayson House. The document was a private agreement between Adrian Cole and an outside investment group. Marcus read the first paragraph, then the second. His expression didn't change, but Kendra knew him well enough to recognize what was happening. He was angry, not because Adrian had betrayed him. Marcus had already accepted that. He was angry because he had finally discovered how long the plan had been running. Adrian hadn't decided to take Grayson House 6 months ago. He had been positioning himself for years. The agreement showed that Adrian had been secretly building relationships with investors who wanted access to Grayson House's properties and intellectual property. The plan was simple. Get Marcus out. Convince Danielle that she could become the company's controlling executive. Move valuable assets into companies Adrian could influence. Then sell those assets to outside investors. Danielle wasn't the mastermind. She was supposed to be the bridge. And once the takeover was complete, Adrian intended to push her aside too. Marcus closed the folder. Does Danielle know? Kendra shook her head. No. Marcus looked toward the city. For 11 years, he had believed Danielle had betrayed him because she no longer loved him. Now he realized the truth was more complicated. She had been manipulated, but that didn't erase what she had done. She had still signed the documents. She had still lied. She had still helped remove him from the company they built together. Marcus wasn't going to pretend otherwise. What's next? He asked. Kendra answered, Tomorrow morning, we file everything. The following morning, the legal filings were submitted. The forged signatures, the financial transfers, the shell companies, the unauthorized restructuring, the attempted asset transfers, and Adrian's private agreement with the outside investment group. Everything was now part of the record. The news spread quickly. Within hours, business reporters began calling Grayson House. By the end of the day, the company's board had suspended Adrian and Vanessa pending a full investigation. The assets they had attempted to transfer were frozen. The planned sale of the flagship property was cancelled. And the ownership dispute that Danielle thought would make her the company's leader was suddenly being examined by lawyers, accountants, and regulators. But Marcus wasn't celebrating. He had something more difficult to deal with: Danielle. They met 3 days later in the same small cafe where Marcus had first met Kendra. Danielle arrived alone. She looked different. Not weaker, just tired. She sat across from him. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Danielle said, I didn't know about Adrian. Marcus looked at her. I believe you. Her eyes filled with tears. But I knew I was helping remove you. Marcus didn't answer. I kept telling myself you were the problem, she continued, that you had changed, that you didn't trust me anymore. Marcus looked down at the table. I didn't trust you because you gave me reasons not to. I know. She wiped her eyes. I thought if I took control of the company, everything would finally feel like it belonged to me. Marcus looked at her. Did it? Danielle shook her head. No. Silence. Then she reached into her bag and placed a small envelope on the table. Marcus didn't touch it. What is that? The first agreement we ever signed. Marcus looked at the envelope. You kept that? I kept everything. For the first time, Marcus smiled. Not happily, sadly. You should have kept us. Danielle looked away. I know. The divorce was finalized several months later. There was no dramatic courtroom confrontation, no shouting, no public humiliation, just signatures, documents, and the quiet ending of a marriage that had once begun with two people who believed they could build something together. Marcus kept control of Grayson House. The board removed Adrian permanently. Vanessa cooperated with the investigation after realizing how much evidence existed against her. The assets that had been moved were recovered, and the company survived. But Marcus changed. He stopped measuring success by the size of the company. He stopped allowing people close to him simply because they were family. And he rebuilt the executive team from the ground up. Months later, Grayson House announced its largest project yet. A new community development designed to provide affordable housing, small business spaces, and architectural training for young people who couldn't afford traditional programs. The first person Marcus hired to lead the community program was someone he had known years before Grayson House became successful. Her name was Elena Brooks. She had worked with Marcus when the company was still operating from that tiny warehouse. She was the woman who had believed in his work before anyone else knew his name. Their relationship didn't begin with a dramatic confession. It began with coffee, then conversations, then trust. Slowly, carefully. The way Marcus believed trust should have been built in the first place. One evening, months after the divorce, Elena asked him a question. "Do you regret building Grayson House?" Marcus looked across the table. No. Even after everything? He thought about Danielle, the boardroom, the security guard, the forged signatures, the old black folder, everything that had happened. Then he smiled. "I regret who I trusted." Elena nodded. "But I don't regret what I built." Marcus looked out through the restaurant window. Across the street stood the original Grayson House building. The same building Danielle and Marcus had designed together when they were young. The same building Adrian had tried to sell. The same building Marcus had nearly lost. It was still there. Not because Marcus had fought louder than everyone else. Not because he had destroyed the people who betrayed him, but because when they thought he had nothing left. He still had the one thing they had never bothered to understand. He knew exactly what he owned, and that was the mistake that cost them everything. Danielle thought she was taking control of Marcus's company. Adrian thought he was taking control of Danielle. The investors thought they were buying Grayson House for a fraction of its true value. But none of them understood the simplest truth. They had spent months fighting over a company they had never actually controlled. Marcus had never needed to destroy them. He only needed to stop standing in the way of their own mistakes. And sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do after being betrayed is refuse to become bitter. Marcus rebuilt the company. He rebuilt his life. And eventually he found something more valuable than the business he had almost lost. Peace. The company was still called Grayson House, but this time Marcus wasn't building it for Danielle. He wasn't building it to prove anything to Adrian, and he certainly wasn't building it for the people who once underestimated him. He was building it for himself, and for the first time in years, that was enough.